The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace as Kate stood in the hallway, her hands trembling slightly. She had been dreading this moment for weeks. Today was the annual charity gala meeting, where all the senior members of the royal family would gather to discuss their philanthropic efforts for the coming year. Kate had prepared a speech about her work with children's mental health, something she cared deeply about. She smoothed down her elegant navy dress and took a deep breath. The grand meeting room was already filling with people when she arrived. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the long mahogany table was surrounded by familiar faces. William gave her an encouraging smile from across the room. He knew how nervous she was about speaking in front of everyone, especially with Camilla present. Camilla had arrived early, as she always did. She sat at the head of the table, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Next to her sat several other senior royals, advisors, and charity coordinators. Kate noticed how Camilla's eyes followed her as she walked to her assigned seat. There was something cold in that gaze, something that made Kate's stomach tighten with anxiety. The meeting began with routine discussions about upcoming events and financial reports. Kate listened carefully, making notes in her leather journal. Her mind kept wandering to her speech, rehearsing the words she had practiced dozens of times in front of the mirror. She wanted to make a difference, to truly help children who were struggling with their mental health. This project meant everything to her. When it was finally her turn to speak, Kate stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to walk to the front of the room. She placed her notes on the podium and looked out at the faces staring back at her. Some were friendly and encouraging. Others seemed impatient or distracted. And then there was Camilla, watching her with an intensity that felt almost predatory. Kate began to speak. Her voice was soft at first, barely above a whisper. She talked about the children she had met during her hospital visits, the families torn apart by mental illness, the young people who felt they had nowhere to turn. As she spoke, her confidence grew. Her voice became stronger, more passionate. She forgot about her nervousness and focused on the message she wanted to share. She described a little girl named Emma, only 7 years old, who had tried to hurt herself because she felt so alone and scared. Kate's voice cracked with emotion as she explained how proper support and counseling had saved Emma's life. She talked about the need for more funding, better training for teachers, and increased awareness about children's mental health issues. The room had grown quiet. People were listening, really listening. Kate could see tears in some eyes, nods of agreement from others. She felt a surge of hope. Maybe she was finally getting through to them. Maybe they would understand how important this work was. Then she made a small mistake. In her passion, she mispronounced a medical term. It was a minor error, barely noticeable. She quickly corrected herself and continued with her speech. But in that moment, she heard it, a sound that cut through the silence like a knife. Laughter, sharp, mocking laughter that echoed through the grand room. Kate froze. Her words died on her lips. She looked toward the source of the sound, already knowing what she would find. Camilla was laughing, her hand partially covering her mouth, but her eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. It wasn't a polite chuckle or a sympathetic smile. It was harsh, deliberate laughter designed to humiliate and belittle. The other people in the room shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked down at their papers, embarrassed to witness such a moment. Others glanced between Kate and Camilla, uncertain how to react. William's face had turned red with anger, his jaw clenched tightly. But royal protocol demanded restraint, and he remained seated, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. Kate felt her face burning with shame. All her confidence evaporated in an instant. She stood there exposed and vulnerable, while Camilla's laughter seemed to fill every corner of the room. It felt like time had stopped. The speech she had worked so hard on, the children she wanted to help, everything seemed to crumble around her. But something inside Kate refused to break. Instead of running from the room or bursting into tears as she desperately wanted to do, she took a slow, deep breath. She looked directly at Camilla, meeting those mocking eyes with her own steady gaze. Then, with a grace that surprised even herself, Kate smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was genuine. She turned back to her audience and continued speaking. Her voice was quieter now, more controlled but somehow more powerful. She finished her presentation without any more mistakes. describing the specific programs she hoped to implement and the projected outcomes. When she was done, she gathered her notes and returned to her seat without looking at Camilla again. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly applause began. It started with just a few people, but soon nearly everyone was clapping. Some stood up, showing their support and admiration. William was the first on his feet, his applause loud and emphatic. Others joined him one by one until most of the room was standing. Camilla was not among them. She remained seated, her expression now neutral, as if the cruel laughter had never happened. But everyone had heard it. Everyone had witnessed her attempt to humiliate Kate in front of the entire gathering. And everyone had seen how Kate had responded with dignity and grace, refusing to be broken by such petty cruelty. As the meeting concluded and people began to leave, several attendees approached Kate privately. They congratulated her on her speech and her composure. One elderly duchess squeezed her hand and whispered that she had never been more proud. A charity coordinator promised full support for her mental health initiative. Even some of the stern-faced advisors who usually remained aloof nodded approvingly as they passed her. Kate accepted their kind words with gratitude, but inside she felt hollow. The laughter still echoed in her mind. She kept replaying that horrible moment, wondering what she had done to deserve such treatment. She had tried so hard to be respectful, to follow protocol, to earn her place in this family. Yet Camilla seemed determined to remind her that she would always be an outsider, someone who didn't truly belong. William found her after the meeting ended. He pulled her into a quiet alcove, away from the crowds and the cameras that were always lurking nearby. His face was still flushed with anger, his hands shaking slightly as he took hers in his own. He told her how proud he was of her, how amazed he was by her strength and grace under such circumstances. He apologized for not standing up more forcefully in the moment, explaining that he was bound by the complex rules of royal hierarchy. But he promised her that this wouldn't be forgotten, that there would be consequences for such disrespectful behavior. Kate nodded, accepting his words, but she knew the truth. This was just the beginning. Camilla's laughter had been a declaration of war, a message that Kate would never be truly accepted or respected. And as she walked through the palace corridors toward her private quarters, Kate realized that she would have to be stronger than she had ever been before. The real battle was just beginning. The days following the charity meeting were strange and uncomfortable. Kate went about her royal duties as usual, attending events, cutting ribbons, and smiling for cameras. But inside, she felt like she was walking on broken glass. Every interaction with other royal family members felt loaded with hidden meaning. Every conversation seemed to carry whispers of what had happened in that meeting room. The media had somehow caught wind that something had occurred, though the details remained unclear. Tabloids ran speculative articles with headlines about tension within the royal family. Photographers became more aggressive, trying to capture any sign of conflict or distress on Kate's face. She learned to keep her expression neutral, to never give them the satisfaction of seeing her pain. At night, alone in her room, Kate would replay that moment over and over. Camilla's laughter haunted her dreams. She would wake up with her heart pounding, feeling the same rush of humiliation and shame. William tried to comfort her, but there was little he could do. The damage had been done and the scars ran deeper than anyone realized. 3 weeks after the incident, Kate received an unexpected invitation. It was handwritten on expensive cream-colored paper, the kind used for formal royal correspondence. The message was brief and formal. Camilla was requesting Kate's presence at a private tea in her personal sitting room. No reason was given, no explanation offered. Just the time, date, and location. Kate stared at the invitation for a long time. Part of her wanted to refuse, to send a polite but firm decline. She had no desire to spend time alone with the woman who had mocked her so cruelly. But another part of her, the part that had been raised to be strong and face difficulties head-on, knew she had to go. Running away would only make things worse. On the appointed day, Kate dressed carefully. She chose a simple but elegant dress in pale blue, paired with her grandmother's pearl earrings. She wanted to look dignified but not confrontational. As she walked through the palace corridors toward Camilla's quarters, her heels clicked against the marble floors, each step feeling like a march toward an uncertain fate. A servant showed her into Camilla's sitting room. It was a beautiful space, decorated in warm tones with antique furniture and fresh flowers. Camilla was already there, seated in a high-backed chair near the fireplace. She looked up as Kate entered, her expression giving nothing away. They exchanged formal greetings, the words stiff and hollow. A server poured tea into delicate china cups, and then they were alone. The silence stretched between them, heavy and oppressive. Kate wrapped her hands around her teacup, feeling the warmth against her palms, grounding herself in the physical sensation. Camilla spoke first. Her voice was smooth and controlled, every word carefully chosen. She asked about Kate's children, about William's recent trip to Scotland, about the weather and the gardens. It was all surface conversation, meaningless small talk that avoided the real reason they were both there. Kate played along, responding with equal politeness and equally empty words. They could have been strangers meeting at a garden party, not two women who shared a family and had experienced such a painful confrontation just weeks earlier. The pretense was exhausting, but Kate maintained it, refusing to be the first to crack. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes of this charade, Camilla set down her teacup with a soft clink. The sound seemed to signal a shift in the conversation. She looked directly at Kate for the first time since they had begun their tea. There was something calculating in her gaze, something that made Kate straighten her spine instinctively. Camilla began to speak about duty and tradition. She talked about the weight of royal responsibility, about the sacrifices required of those who serve the crown. Her words were eloquent and measured, but beneath them, Kate could sense criticism and judgment. Every phrase seemed designed to remind Kate that she was new to this world, that she hadn't been born into it as Camilla had. She spoke about the importance of maintaining dignity at all times, of never showing weakness or emotion in public. She mentioned how previous generations of royal women had endured far worse than anything Kate had experienced, implying that Kate was somehow less capable or less deserving of her position. Kate listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral. Inside, anger was building, hot and fierce. She recognized what Camilla was doing. This wasn't an apology or an attempt at reconciliation. It was another attack, just more subtle than the laughter had been. Camilla was trying to put Kate in her place, to remind her that she would always be considered an outsider, someone who needed to prove herself worthy. When Camilla finally paused, Kate took a sip of her tea. The liquid was cold now, bitter on her tongue. She set the cup down gently and looked at Camilla with clear, steady eyes. Then she began to speak, and her words were not what Camilla expected. Kate talked about grace. Not the grace of royal bloodlines or inherited titles, but the grace of compassion and kindness. She spoke about the children she had met who were suffering, about families struggling with poverty and illness, about real people with real problems who needed help, not judgment. Her voice remained soft and controlled, but there was steel beneath the gentleness. She explained that she had chosen to dedicate herself to this work, not because protocol required it, but because she genuinely cared. She talked about Emma, the little girl from her speech, and how she was now thriving in school thanks to proper mental health support. Kate acknowledged that she might not have been born into royalty, that she might not understand all the unwritten rules and ancient traditions, but she knew what it meant to be human. She knew what it meant to feel pain and fear and hope, and she believed that these qualities were more important than any title or lineage. As she spoke, Kate watched Camilla's expression change. The older woman's carefully maintained composure began to slip. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her lips pressed into a thin line. She hadn't expected Kate to defend herself so eloquently, to turn the conversation around so skillfully. Kate continued, her confidence growing with each word. She talked about the role of modern royalty, about the need to connect with ordinary people and address real societal problems. She suggested that perhaps tradition wasn't always more important than progress, that sometimes the old ways needed to be questioned and improved. It was subtle, but it was clear. Kate was not backing down. She was not accepting Camilla's view of the world or her place in it. She was asserting her own value, her own right to be heard and respected, and she was doing it all with the same grace that had allowed her to finish her speech, despite the cruel laughter. Camilla's face had grown pale. She was not accustomed to being challenged, especially not by someone she considered beneath her in the royal hierarchy. For a moment, Kate thought she might explode with anger, might lash out again with cutting words or dismissive gestures. But instead, something unexpected happened. Camilla's expression shifted. The hardness in her eyes softened slightly, replaced by something that might have been surprise or even grudging respect. She picked up her teacup again, taking a slow sip before speaking. Her next words were quieter, less confrontational. She admitted that the world was changing, that perhaps she had been too rigid in her thinking. She didn't apologize for the laughter, not directly, but there was an acknowledgement in her tone that something had been wrong about that moment. Kate didn't push for more. She knew that this was as close to an apology as she would likely ever receive. They finished their tea in a silence that was slightly less hostile than before, though far from friendly. When Kate finally stood to leave, they exchanged polite goodbyes, and Kate walked out of that room with her head held high. As she made her way back through the palace corridors, Kate felt something shift inside her. She had faced her fear and spoken her truth. She had refused to be diminished or silenced. The battle was far from over, but she had won an important victory. She had proven to herself, and perhaps to Camilla, that she belonged in this family not because of permission or acceptance from others, but because she had earned her place through her own strength and dedication. That night, when William asked about the tea, Kate simply smiled and told him it had gone better than expected. She didn't share all the details, didn't describe the tension or the subtle warfare that had taken place over delicate china cups. Some battles were personal, and this one had been hers alone to fight, and she had emerged stronger for it. The summer brought a temporary reprieve from palace tensions. The royal family scattered to their various country estates, and Kate found herself at Anmer Hall in Norfolk, with William and the children. The peaceful countryside, with its wide skies and quiet gardens, felt like a sanctuary after the suffocating atmosphere of formal royal life. Kate spent her days playing with the children in the garden, teaching them to identify birds and plant vegetables. She went for long walks along the beach, the salt air clearing her mind and restoring her spirit. At night, she would sit by the window and watch the stars, feeling more like herself than she had in months. But even in this peaceful setting, she couldn't completely escape the shadow of what had happened. News would arrive from London, reports about upcoming events and obligations. Each time she heard Camilla's name mentioned, Kate felt a small knot form in her stomach. The tea meeting had ended on a slightly better note, but the fundamental tension remained unresolved. One afternoon, Kate received a phone call from her private secretary. There was to be a major royal event in the autumn, a gala celebrating a significant anniversary. All senior royals were expected to attend, and Kate would need to give another speech. Her secretary's voice was cheerful and encouraging, but Kate felt her anxiety return with crushing force. She would have to stand in front of everyone again, speak publicly, risk another moment of humiliation. The thought made her physically ill. That night she lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. What if Camilla laughed again? What if this time she couldn't maintain her composure? What if she truly fell apart in front of everyone? William found her the next morning, sitting at the kitchen table with untouched tea growing cold in front of her. He could see the fear in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. He sat down across from her and took her hands in his, asking her what was wrong. Kate told him about the upcoming gala, about her terror of speaking publicly again. He listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he reminded her of how strong she had been before. He told her that her speech about children's mental health had actually made a real difference. Funding had been approved for several new programs. Schools were implementing better support systems. Emma, the little girl Kate had mentioned, had sent a drawing to the palace, a picture of flowers and sunshine with the words, "Thank you," written in wobbly letters. Kate felt tears sting her eyes. She had been so focused on the humiliation of that moment that she had lost sight of the actual purpose of her speech. Children were being helped because she had found the courage to speak up. That was what truly mattered, not Camilla's cruel laughter or her own wounded pride. Over the following weeks, Kate began to prepare for the autumn gala. But this time she approached it differently. She practiced her speech, but she also worked on strengthening her inner resolve. She spent time with the children her programs were helping, reminding herself why this work was important. She wrote in her journal, processing her fears and anxieties instead of letting them consume her. She also began to understand something crucial about Camilla. The laughter hadn't really been about Kate's small mistake or her speech. It had been about power and control, about an older woman threatened by a younger one's growing influence and popularity. Camilla had spent years establishing her position in the royal family, fighting against public disapproval and earning her place beside the king. Kate's natural warmth and popularity with the public must have felt like a threat to that hard-won position. This understanding didn't excuse the cruelty, but it helped Kate see the situation more clearly. She wasn't being attacked because she was inadequate or unworthy. She was being attacked because she was succeeding, because people responded to her genuine compassion and dedication. In a strange way, Camilla's hostility was almost a twisted compliment. As September approached, the family returned to London. The city felt different to Kate now, less intimidating than before. She had spent the summer reclaiming her confidence, and she returned with a renewed sense of purpose. She threw herself into her charity work, visiting hospitals and schools, meeting with families and counselors. During one hospital visit, Kate met a teenage boy named Michael. He was 15 years old and had been struggling with severe depression. He had attempted suicide twice and spent months in treatment. But now he was recovering, slowly learning to manage his mental health and find reasons to hope again. Michael told Kate that he had heard about her speech, about how she had talked about children like him who were suffering. He said that knowing someone like her cared about his struggles had given him courage. He had written her a letter, which he shyly handed to her during their meeting. Kate read it right there, tears streaming down her face as she absorbed his words of gratitude and hope. That letter became Kate's talisman. She kept it with her always, carrying it in her bag like a shield against doubt and fear. Whenever she felt her confidence wavering, she would touch the envelope and remember why she was doing this work. It wasn't about her. It was about Michael and Emma and thousands of other children who needed someone to fight for them. The night before the autumn gala, Kate barely slept. But it wasn't fear that kept her awake this time. It was anticipation and determination. She had prepared a new speech, one that spoke even more powerfully about the need for mental health support. She had statistics and stories, facts and emotional appeals. She was ready. The morning of the gala, Kate dressed in a stunning emerald green gown that made her eyes shine. She wore her hair up, elegant and sophisticated, and chose jewelry that was beautiful but not ostentatious. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw a woman who had been tested and had not broken. She saw strength and grace in equal measure. The gala was held in one of London's most prestigious venues, a historic building with soaring ceilings and gilded decorations. Hundreds of people attended, including politicians, celebrities, and philanthropists. The royal family arrived together, walking through the entrance as cameras flashed and crowds cheered. Kate noticed Camilla immediately. The older woman wore a beautiful silver gown and carried herself with her usual regal bearing. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and Kate saw something flicker in Camilla's expression. Recognition, perhaps, or wariness. Camilla had underestimated Kate once before. She wouldn't make that mistake again. The evening progressed through dinner and various presentations. Kate sat at the head table, engaging in polite conversation while her heart beat faster with each passing minute. She knew her speech would come near the end of the program, and the anticipation was almost unbearable. Finally, her name was announced. Kate stood and walked to the podium, her emerald gown flowing behind her. The room fell silent as she adjusted the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. She found William in the crowd, his encouraging smile giving her strength. She saw Michael's parents, who had been invited as her special guests, and she saw Camilla watching with an inscrutable expression. Kate began to speak. Her voice was strong and clear from the very first word. She talked about the progress that had been made in children's mental health support over the past months. She shared success stories and outlined future goals. She spoke about the importance of removing stigma and providing resources. As she spoke, Kate felt a power flowing through her that she had never experienced before. This wasn't just confidence or preparation. This was purpose. This was the voice of someone who had found their calling and wouldn't be silenced by anyone or anything. She told Michael's story, with his permission, describing his journey from despair to hope. She explained how proper support and compassionate care had saved his life. Her voice trembled with emotion, but it was strong emotion, not weakness. She was speaking truth, and everyone in that room could feel it. The audience was completely engaged. People leaned forward in their seats, hanging on every word. Some dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Others nodded along, clearly moved by what they were hearing. Kate could feel the energy in the room, the connection she had made with these people. She concluded her speech with a call to action, urging everyone present to support mental health initiatives and to speak openly about these issues. She reminded them that every child deserved the chance to grow up healthy and happy, free from the shame and silence that often surrounded mental illness. As she finished, the room erupted in applause. But this time it was immediate and overwhelming. People didn't just clap politely. They stood up as one, giving her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. The applause was thunderous, filling every corner of the grand hall. Kate stood at the podium, overwhelmed by the response. She looked out at the crowd through eyes blurred with tears of gratitude and relief. And then her gaze found Camilla. The older woman was still seated, but slowly, almost reluctantly, she rose to her feet. She wasn't clapping enthusiastically, but she was standing, and there was no laughter this time. No mockery or cruelty, just a quiet acknowledgement of what everyone in that room already knew. Kate had won. The weeks following the autumn gala brought unexpected changes to Kate's life. Her speech had been covered extensively by the media, with journalists praising her passion and eloquence. Social media exploded with support, with thousands of people sharing their own mental health stories and thanking Kate for speaking out. The hashtag she had inadvertently created trended for days. More importantly, the speech had real impact. Major corporations pledged funding for mental health programs. The government announced new initiatives for schools. Medical institutions reached out to collaborate on research and treatment approaches. Kate found herself at the center of a movement that was actually changing lives, and the responsibility of it both thrilled and terrified her. Her days became busier than ever. She attended meetings with healthcare professionals, visited more hospitals and schools, and worked with her team to develop comprehensive programs. She was exhausted most of the time, but it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from meaningful work rather than empty obligation. Through it all, Kate was aware of Camilla's presence in the background. They attended the same official events, sat at the same formal dinners, and participated in the same royal functions. But something had shifted between them. Camilla no longer openly challenged or mocked Kate. Instead, there was a careful distance, a mutual wariness that both women seemed content to maintain. One cold November morning, Kate received an unusual request. Camilla's private secretary called to ask if Kate would be willing to participate in a joint appearance. It would be a visit to a veterans hospital, one of Camilla's long-standing patronages. The secretary explained that the hospital had recently opened a new mental health wing for veterans suffering from trauma and depression, and they thought it would be meaningful to have both women present for the dedication ceremony. Kate was immediately suspicious. After everything that had happened, why would Camilla want to share the spotlight? Was this another opportunity for humiliation, a more public and devastating attack? Or was it a genuine olive branch, an attempt to move past their conflict? She discussed it with William, weighing the risks and benefits. He advised caution but encouraged her to accept. Running away would only prolong the tension, he argued. Besides, the veterans deserved to have both of them there, supporting their care and recovery. This wasn't about Kate and Camilla. It was about serving others. Kate agreed to the appearance, though she prepared herself for the worst. On the morning of the hospital visit, she dressed conservatively in a dark blue suit and minimal jewelry. She wanted to look professional and respectful, nothing that could be criticized or twisted into controversy. The car ride to the hospital felt impossibly long. Kate stared out the window at the gray London streets, her stomach churning with anxiety. She kept telling herself that she could handle whatever happened, that she had already survived the worst Camilla could throw at her. But doubt lingered like a shadow. When she arrived at the hospital, Camilla was already there. They greeted each other formally, their smiles polite but distant. Hospital administrators and military officials surrounded them, excited about the attention this visit would bring to their new facility. Neither woman had much opportunity for private conversation before the tour began. They walked through the mental health wing together, side by side, but not touching, maintaining a careful space between them. The wing was beautiful and modern, designed to feel more like a healing retreat than a clinical facility. Large windows let in natural light, and the rooms were painted in calming colors. Art hung on the walls, donated by local artists who wanted to support the veterans. They met with several patients, young men and women who had served their country and returned home carrying invisible wounds. Kate listened to their stories with genuine attention, asking questions and offering words of encouragement. She noticed that Camilla did the same, her usual reserve softening in the presence of these brave individuals who had sacrificed so much. One veteran, a young woman named Sarah, told them about her struggle with post-traumatic stress. She described the nightmares, the panic attacks, the feeling that she was broken and beyond repair. But then she talked about the treatment she had received in this new wing, how therapy and medication and support groups had slowly helped her reclaim her life. Sarah looked directly at Kate and mentioned her speech from the autumn gala. She said that hearing someone from the royal family speak so openly about mental health had given her courage to seek help. She had been ashamed of her struggles, believing that as a soldier she should be tougher, stronger, unbreakable. But Kate's words had helped her understand that asking for help was also a form of courage. Kate felt tears threatening and fought them back. She thanked Sarah for her service and her bravery in sharing her story. Then, unexpectedly, Camilla spoke up. Her voice was quiet but firm as she told Sarah that she too had experienced loss and pain in her life, that mental health struggles didn't discriminate based on rank or status or background. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from someone who usually maintained such rigid control. The tour continued through various therapy rooms and recreational spaces. They saw art therapy sessions where veterans expressed their trauma through painting and sculpture. They visited a meditation room where patients learned mindfulness techniques. They observed group therapy sessions where people shared their experiences and supported one another. Throughout it all, Kate and Camilla maintained their professional distance. But there were moments, brief and fleeting, where something passed between them. A shared look when a veteran said something particularly moving. A simultaneous reach for tissues when everyone in the room was crying. Small acknowledgments that despite their differences, they were both human beings capable of empathy and compassion. The dedication ceremony took place in the wing's main common area. Hospital staff, military leaders, and patients gathered to mark the official opening. Both Kate and Camilla were asked to speak. Camilla went first, delivering remarks about duty, service, and the importance of supporting those who had defended their nation. Her speech was polished and appropriate, though somewhat formal and distant. Then it was Kate's turn. She had prepared notes but found herself speaking more from the heart. She talked about the strength it took to admit vulnerability, about the importance of breaking down the stigma surrounding mental health. She specifically addressed the veterans in the room, thanking them for their courage both in service and in seeking help. As she spoke, Kate noticed something remarkable. Camilla was watching her intently, but there was no mockery in her gaze. No cruel anticipation of mistakes or moments of weakness. Instead, there was something that looked almost like respect. Camilla was actually listening, really listening to what Kate had to say. Kate finished her speech to warm applause. The ceremony concluded with a ribbon cutting, both women holding the oversized scissors together. Their hands were close but not touching, symbolizing perhaps the relationship they had developed. Not friends, not allies, but two women who had learned to coexist with a measure of mutual respect. After the ceremony, there was a private reception for hospital administrators and major donors. Kate and Camilla found themselves standing near each other by the refreshment table. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched between them, filled with everything that had happened and everything that remained unsaid. Finally, Camilla broke the silence. Her voice was low, meant only for Kate's ears. She mentioned the autumn gala, acknowledging that Kate had done well. It wasn't quite an apology for the earlier incident, but it was recognition that Kate had proven herself capable and worthy. Coming from Camilla, it was a significant concession. Kate accepted the words with grace, thanking Camilla for including her in this hospital visit. She mentioned how meaningful it had been to meet the veterans and see the important work being done. She suggested that perhaps they could collaborate on future projects that combined their respective focuses. It was an olive branch of her own, an offer to move forward rather than remain stuck in past conflicts. Camilla seemed surprised by the suggestion but didn't reject it outright. She said she would consider it, which was more than Kate had expected. They parted shortly after, each returning to their separate cars and separate lives. But something had shifted during that hospital visit. The animosity hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something more manageable, more professional. On the drive back to the palace, Kate reflected on the day. She realized that she no longer needed Camilla's approval or acceptance. She had found her own voice and her own purpose. The work she was doing was important, and it would continue regardless of anyone's opinion of her. That knowledge was liberating in a way she hadn't anticipated. She also understood that Camilla was more complex than she had initially believed. Yes, the older woman could be cruel and cutting, but she was also capable of compassion, particularly toward those who were suffering. Perhaps her hostility toward Kate had come from a place of insecurity rather than pure malice. Perhaps she had seen in Kate a reflection of her own struggles to be accepted and respected within the royal family. These thoughts didn't excuse the laughter or the attempts at humiliation, but they helped Kate see the bigger picture. Winter descended on London with its characteristic gray skies and biting cold. The palace felt darker during these months, the long corridors seeming to stretch endlessly, the ancient stones holding centuries of cold within their walls. Kate found herself missing the summer warmth and the peaceful days at Anmer Hall more than ever. The holiday season brought its own challenges. Royal Christmas was always a complex affair, with rigid traditions and endless expectations. Extended family members who were usually scattered across the country gathered together, creating a pressure cooker of personalities and unresolved tensions. Kate had been dreading it for weeks. The family would spend Christmas at Sandringham as they always did. There would be formal dinners and church services, gift exchanges governed by complicated rules, and countless photo opportunities where everyone would be expected to look perfectly happy and united. Kate knew that she and Camilla would be thrown together repeatedly during these celebrations, forced to maintain the appearance of family harmony for the cameras and the public. The week before Christmas, Kate threw herself into preparation. She organized gifts for family members, planned activities for the children, and coordinated with staff about travel arrangements. Staying busy helped keep her anxiety at bay, though it couldn't eliminate it entirely. At night, lying in bed next to William, she would stare at the ceiling and worry about all the ways the holiday could go wrong. William tried to reassure her, reminding her of how far she had come since the charity meeting incident. He pointed out that her relationship with Camilla had improved or at least stabilized since the hospital visit. But Kate couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, that the tenuous peace between them was too fragile to survive the intensity of a family Christmas. They arrived at Sandringham 2 days before Christmas. The estate looked beautiful, decorated with wreaths and lights, the grounds covered in a light dusting of snow. But the beauty couldn't mask the tension Kate felt as they entered the main house. Camilla was already there, having arrived earlier with the king. Kate saw her through the window of the drawing room, sipping tea and speaking with other family members. The first evening passed without incident. There was a formal dinner where everyone made polite conversation and avoided controversial topics. Kate sat several seats away from Camilla, which made things easier. They exchanged brief pleasantries when they happened to cross paths, but nothing more substantial. Kate began to think that perhaps she had worried unnecessarily, that the holiday might pass without any major conflicts. Christmas Eve brought the traditional gift exchange. The royal family had a peculiar tradition of giving joke gifts rather than expensive presents, something that Kate had found charming when she first married into the family, but now found stressful. The pressure to be funny without being offensive, clever without being inappropriate, was surprisingly intense. Everyone gathered in the drawing room after dinner, the fireplace crackling warmly as servants brought in champagne and appetizers. The king presided over the gift opening, calling out names and watching with amusement as each person opened their present. There was laughter and teasing, the atmosphere more relaxed than it had been during the formal dinner. Kate had carefully chosen her gifts, spending weeks trying to find the right balance of humor and appropriateness for each person. For Camilla, she had selected an elegant bookmark shaped like a crown, with a small joke about always keeping one's place in the story. It was a safe choice, unlikely to offend but still participating in the spirit of the tradition. When Camilla opened Kate's gift, There was a brief silence. Kate held her breath, watching the older woman's face for any sign of her reaction. Then Camilla smiled, a small but genuine expression of amusement. She held up the bookmark for others to see, and there was polite laughter around the room. Kate felt relief wash over her. It had gone well, but then it was time for Kate to open Camilla's gift to her. The package was small and wrapped in expensive paper. Kate unwrapped it carefully, aware that everyone was watching. Inside was a delicate crystal figure of a dove, beautifully crafted but also clearly symbolic. The dove represented peace, but it also could be seen as a reference to innocence or naivety. Kate stared at the crystal dove, trying to interpret Camilla's intention. Was this a peace offering, a genuine gesture toward reconciliation, or was it a subtle insult, implying that Kate was naive and inexperienced? The ambiguity of it was maddening, and Kate realized that was probably the point. Camilla had given her a gift that could be interpreted in multiple ways, protecting herself from criticism, while still maintaining the possibility of a veiled attack. Kate looked up and met Camilla's eyes across the room. The older woman's expression was neutral, giving nothing away. Kate made a split-second decision. She would choose to interpret the gift generously, to see it as a peace offering rather than an insult. She smiled warmly and thanked Camilla, commenting on how beautiful the crystal work was. If it was a trap, she would refuse to fall into it. The evening continued with more gift opening and celebration. Kate placed the crystal dove carefully in her bag, already planning to display it prominently in her quarters. If Camilla had meant it as an insult, Kate would subvert that by treating it as a cherished gift. If it had been genuine, then Kate's response would strengthen the fragile peace between them. Christmas Day began early with church services. The entire family walked together from Sandringham to the local church, waving at crowds of well-wishers who had gathered to see them. Kate wore a beautiful burgundy coat and matching hat, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. She walked with William and the children, maintaining her composed public smile even as her feet grew cold in the winter morning. During the service, Kate found herself sitting just a few seats away from Camilla. They shared a hymn book at one point, both women holding the edges of the book, their hands close but not touching. Kate focused on the words of the hymns, finding comfort in the familiar melodies and messages of peace and goodwill. After church, there was the traditional Christmas lunch, an elaborate affair with multiple courses and strict seating arrangements. Kate found herself seated directly across from Camilla for the first time during the holiday. There was no avoiding conversation now. They would have to interact, to speak to each other beyond brief pleasantries. The meal began with awkward small talk about the church service and the decorations. But as the courses progressed and the wine flowed, the conversation became more natural. They discussed the charities they were involved with, the challenges of public service, and the constant scrutiny of the media. Kate was surprised to find that they actually had quite a bit in common, despite their differences. Camilla mentioned some of the difficulties she had faced when she first joined the royal family. The public disapproval and constant criticism. She spoke about learning to develop a thick skin, to not let the harsh words and judgments destroy her sense of self. Kate listened with growing understanding, recognizing parallels to her own experiences. Without directly addressing their conflict, Camilla was sharing something important. She was acknowledging in her own indirect way that she understood what Kate was going through. The cruelty Kate had experienced, the attempts to belittle and diminish her, were part of a larger pattern. Camilla had endured similar treatment, perhaps even worse, during her own early years in the royal spotlight. Kate found herself softening toward Camilla in a way she hadn't expected. She began to see the older woman not as a villain, but as someone who had been shaped by pain and struggle, someone who had learned to protect herself through distance and control. The laughter at Kate's speech, the subtle undermining and challenges, these were defense mechanisms from someone who had been attacked and wounded herself. After lunch, there was free time before the evening festivities. Kate took the children out to play in the snow, building a snowman and having snowball fights. It was a relief to be away from the adults and their complicated dynamics, to simply enjoy the holiday with her family. William joined them, and for a while Kate could almost forget about the tensions and anxieties that had plagued her. But as she watched the children play, Kate noticed Camilla standing at a window looking out at them. There was something wistful in her expression, a sadness that Kate hadn't seen before. She wondered what Camilla was thinking, what memories or regrets might be surfacing on this family holiday. That evening, there was a more casual gathering in the drawing room. Family members played games and shared stories. The atmosphere relaxed after the formality of the day's earlier events. Kate found herself sitting near Camilla on one of the sofas, both of them slightly removed from the main activity. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, simply watching the others and enjoying the warmth of the fire. Then Camilla spoke, her voice so quiet that Kate almost didn't hear her. She said something that Kate would never forget, words that changed everything between them. Camilla admitted that she had been wrong to laugh at Kate's speech. She didn't make excuses or try to justify her behavior. She simply acknowledged that it had been cruel and unnecessary, and that Kate had handled the situation with remarkable grace. It was a genuine apology, perhaps the first truly genuine thing came. Spring arrived with a burst of color and warmth that seemed to mirror the changes in Kate's life. The gardens at Kensington Palace bloomed with daffodils and tulips, and the city itself seemed to shake off the gray weight of winter. Kate felt lighter too, as if the resolution with Camilla had lifted a burden she hadn't fully realized she was carrying. The months following Christmas brought new opportunities and challenges. Kate's mental health initiatives continued to grow and expand, reaching more children and families than she had ever imagined possible. She received letters almost daily from parents thanking her for bringing attention to these issues, from teenagers telling her that her words had saved their lives, from teachers grateful for the resources and training now available to them. Emma, the little girl from Kate's first speech, sent regular updates. She was thriving in school now, making friends and participating in activities. Her mother included photos showing a smiling, confident child who bore little resemblance to the frightened girl Kate had first met. These reminders of real impact kept Kate motivated even on the hardest days. The relationship with Camilla evolved slowly but steadily. They weren't friends, and Kate suspected they never would be. Their personalities were too different, their histories too complicated, but they had developed a mutual respect and a professional partnership that worked surprisingly well. They appeared together at several events throughout the spring, and the media began to notice the change in their dynamic. Where once there had been awkward distance and barely concealed tension, now there was cooperation and even occasional warmth. Journalists wrote articles analyzing the shift, speculating about what had caused the improvement in their relationship. One particular event stood out. It was a joint appearance at a facility that combined veteran support services with youth mental health programs, bringing together both women's charitable focuses. They had worked together to plan the visit, exchanging emails and phone calls to coordinate their remarks and ensure they complemented rather than competed with each other. During the visit, they met a young veteran named James, who was also a father of 2 children, struggling with anxiety. His story bridged both women's areas of concern, and they found themselves working together naturally, asking questions and offering support. At one point, Camilla placed a comforting hand on the man's shoulder, while Kate knelt down to speak with his children at eye level. It was a moment of genuine collaboration, both women united in their desire to help this family. The media photos from that day showed Kate and Camilla standing side by side, both smiling genuinely, their body language relaxed and comfortable. The images went viral on social media, with people commenting on how much healthier and happier both women looked. Some older photos from the autumn charity meeting surfaced, showing the stark contrast in their relationship then versus now. Kate framed one of those photos and placed it on her desk, not out of vanity but as a reminder of how far they had both come. She looked at it sometimes when she was feeling discouraged or overwhelmed, remembering that change was possible even in the most difficult situations. In early May, Kate received an unexpected invitation to have lunch with Camilla at Clarence's house, just the 2 of them without staff or other family members present. It was a private meeting, the kind that would never be photographed or reported in the media. Kate accepted, curious about what Camilla wanted to discuss. The lunch was surprisingly pleasant. They ate in a small dining room overlooking the gardens, the spring sunshine streaming through the windows. The conversation flowed more easily than Kate had expected. They talked about their children and grandchildren, about books they had read and places they wanted to visit. They discussed the pressures of public life and the constant challenge of balancing personal desires with royal obligations. Camilla shared stories from her early years in the royal family, the mistakes she had made and the lessons she had learned. She spoke frankly about the loneliness and isolation she had felt, the sense that she would never truly be accepted no matter how hard she tried. Kate listened with genuine empathy, recognizing so much of her own experience in Camilla's words. Then Camilla did something unexpected. She apologized again, more fully this time. She explained that when she had laughed at Kate's speech, it hadn't been about Kate at all. It had been about Camilla's own insecurities and fears, her worry that she was being replaced or overshadowed. She had lashed out at Kate because Kate represented everything Camilla feared she could never be. Naturally warm, genuinely beloved by the public, effortlessly graceful under pressure. Kate felt her throat tighten with emotion as she listened. She had understood some of this intellectually, but hearing Camilla articulate it so clearly was different. It transformed their conflict from a personal attack into something more universal. A story about two women struggling with impossible expectations and their own internal demons. Kate shared her own vulnerabilities in return. She talked about how terrified she had been that day, how much Camilla's laughter had hurt her, how close she had come to giving up on her charity work entirely. She admitted that for months she had dreaded every public appearance, afraid of being humiliated again. But she also thanked Camilla. In a strange way, that moment of cruelty had forced Kate to find her own strength. It had pushed her to develop a resilience and confidence that she might never have discovered otherwise. She had learned that she didn't need anyone's approval to do meaningful work, that her value wasn't determined by others' opinions of her. Camilla listened quietly, and when Kate finished, there were tears in her eyes. She reached across the table and took Kate's hand, holding it firmly. She told Kate that she admired her, that Kate's grace and dignity had taught her important lessons about leadership and compassion. It was a profound moment of connection, two women who had been adversaries becoming something closer to allies. As the lunch concluded, they made plans to continue their collaborative work. They discussed ideas for future projects that would combine their respective causes, ways they could support each other's initiatives and amplify their shared message about the importance of mental health and veteran support. Walking back to her car after the lunch, Kate felt a sense of completion. The journey from that horrible moment of laughter to this place of mutual respect and genuine connection had been long and painful. But it had also been transformative. She had discovered strength she didn't know she possessed. She had learned that grace under pressure wasn't about perfection, it was about authenticity and resilience. Over the following months, Kate and Camilla's partnership continued to strengthen. They appeared together frequently, and their genuine camaraderie was evident to everyone who saw them. The media narrative shifted from speculation about rivalry to celebration of their collaboration. Articles were written about how they were redefining royal relationships, showing that even difficult beginnings could lead to productive partnerships. In July, they co-hosted a major fundraising gala for mental health and veteran services. It was the biggest event either of them had organized, bringing together celebrities, politicians, and philanthropists. The evening raised millions of pounds for their combined causes and generated enormous positive media coverage. During the gala, both women gave speeches. Kate went first, talking about the journey she had been on over the past year, the children and families she had met, and the progress that had been made. She spoke with confidence and passion, her voice never wavering, her message clear and powerful. Then Camilla spoke. She talked about Kate's dedication and impact, praising her younger colleague publicly in a way that left no doubt about her sincerity. She spoke about the importance of supporting one another, of recognizing that they were stronger together than apart, and she acknowledged, obliquely but clearly, that she had not always lived up to that ideal, but was committed to doing better. The audience responded with thunderous applause. People who knew the history between these two women understood the significance of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just about charity work or royal duties. This was about forgiveness, growth, and the possibility of redemption. After the gala, as guests mingled and celebrated, Kate and Camilla found themselves standing together on a balcony overlooking the city. The summer evening was beautiful, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold as the sun set. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, simply enjoying the moment and the satisfaction of a successful event. Camilla broke the silence first. She said that she was grateful Kate hadn't given up, that she had persevered despite everything. She admitted that if their positions had been reversed, she wasn't sure she would have been as gracious or as forgiving. Kate smiled and shook her head. She told Camilla that she had almost given up many times, that there had been nights when she had cried herself to sleep, convinced she wasn't strong enough for this life. But she had discovered that strength wasn't about never feeling fear or pain. It was about continuing despite those feelings, about choosing courage even when it felt impossible. They talked about the future, about the work still to be done and the challenges that lay ahead. They acknowledged that their relationship would probably always be complicated, that they would have disagreements and difficulty,